So let us start with the standards of solar PV installation. Several international standards which have been issued for practicing safety in electrical installations. Specific standards have been issued for solar PV system installations and equipment as well. Some of the standards will be covered by Mr. Devdas Goswami during his presentation. Talking about Mr. Goswami, Mr. Goswami is a graduate in electrical engineering from Calcutta University. He worked with the Bureau of Indian Standards for more than 30 years, that is 3 decades, after superannuation joined International Copper Association India as a senior advisor. He worked with BIS in various capacities, including as the head of its electrotechnical division and as the head of BIS Jaipur office. Mr. Goswami has vast experience in formulating electrical standards both at the national and international levels. He has played a key role in developing many Indian standards on electrical fire safety.
My topic of presentation is standards and certification of solar PV products and systems. My presentation would cover a brief introduction of activities of ICAI, development of solar power generation in India, importance of solar PV standards, national and international standards in this area, Indian standard on solar DC cable, certification of solar PV products, and mandatory implementation of solar PV standards. So let me start my presentation with a brief introduction of International Copper Association and the activities. International Copper Association is a member of Copper Alliance, and the Indian arm of International Copper Association was formed in 1998, a not-for-profit, non-commercial organization, have a presence in more than 60 countries. Our current initiatives includes promote safe wiring practices in the building, increase awareness of power quality through Asia Power Quality Initiative, propagate use of energy efficient motors, pumps for sustainable energy saving in industries, promote use of superior microwave copper tube heat exchanger technology in air conditioner, reduce distribution losses in power sector through use of low loss distribution transformer, and also encourage renewable energy technologies like solar water heater, solar pump, etc. Coming back to the main topic of discussion today, solar power is a boon for developing countries like India, where we are starved of energy resources. Much of our scarce foreign exchange is spent on securing energy need of the country with such a huge population. Solar power is free and is available in abundance in most part of the country. It took almost a century for the commercial development of solar cell in 1957 in Bell Lab, since the first discovery of generation of electric charge due to exposure of light in 1839. Better late than never, so India has now opportunity to be resource independent. This is reflected in government promotion of solar PV, as in the last 5 years, India has become a thriving market for solar PV. So much so that conventional thermal power has been pushed to the corner and is under threat. We cannot imagine such a thing happen even a decade ago. Last 5 years has seen a compounded CAGR growth of solar energy of over 60% in India. It's a huge breakthrough, and we have an ambitious target of 100 gigawatt by 2022. Let's now focus on the power generation aspect of solar PV. Solar PV, it is basically the cell inside the PV module that are responsible for generating electrical potential differences. Therefore, the quality of PV cells and modules is vital in the whole system of PV generation. Right now, there are 3 types of PV modules: monocrystalline, polycrystalline, and thin film type of panels used in varying degree of efficiency, which ranges from 8 to 24% depending on how much you spend on it. But the most common commercial efficiency available in the market is about 21%. That means we are losing as much as 80% of potential source of energy. But there is a good news, that research is already in advanced stage to increase this efficiency level to 50%, which in a way will transform energy scenario all over the world. Added to this technological development taking place in storage space, it will be great opportunity in this sphere. But conventional business of power development like thermal, hydro, etc. will go to the backseat. Though they may be required, but they have already started looking for alternative business model. However, there are challenges in solar power generation too, as solar PV generation takes place only during daytime, and that too where intense sunlight is available. Efficiency of solar panels are affected due to dust, pollution, which sometimes get cleaned due to rainfall, but not all the places get such opportunity in required interval. Then there are mechanical stress hazards coming from wind, heat, and cold cycle, humidity, and other threats coming from bird, monkeys. So solar modules should be robust. The more robust you make it, its exposure to sunlight get reduced. So all these technological challenges need to be surmounted. Then solar tracker has been developed to change the angle of incidence of light due to change in direction of sun. But all these adds to complexities and cost. In any case, right now we will focus our attention to the PV system, which contains array of PV modules, inverter, battery pack for energy storage, controller, wiring, protection, circuit breakers, fuses, switches, measuring meters, solar tracking mechanism as required. Let's see why standard is so critical for solar PV system. First, it has both AC and DC system to design. It has to integrate multiple source of energy coming from solar side, battery side, and also from grid side. Power flow can be bidirectional as exchange of powers takes place between PV system and grid. And finally, the power that are going to be injected to the grid has to follow certain specific protocol for its integration. It is not so easy that you just connect it and run. So at all these junction points, there are complexities. Lots of electronics and reliability issue is vital, for which standard and specification would play a very important role. Now let us look at the standards sphere in the country and internationally. What is happening there? Standards in solar PV system at the national level is being developed by Bureau of Indian Standard. It has a well laid out technical committee structure, which I will cover in next slides. Experts from all over the country participate in standard formulation process of BIS, and anybody can make requests to participate in BIS. Comments on documents can be sent by anybody. Just keep seeing the list of such documents of interest available for comments in BIS website. At the international level, mainly the International Electrotechnical Commission, IEC, is responsible for developing these standards for solar PV system. BIS is member of IEC and has a direct collaboration with IEC, and all the standards developed by IEC are accessible to BIS, and therefore the technical development at national level is at par with the international level. Participation at international level, if anybody is interested, can be done through BIS. First, you have to be a member of BIS technical committee, and then you can participate. It is not complicated at all, and if anybody is interested, you can write to BIS. It is very much encouraged to participate in IEC level. In addition to IEC, there are a few other bodies who are also developing standards for solar PV area, like IEEE, the Technical Committee SSC 21, UL, and ASTM. European standards bodies are also there, but they are mostly aligned with IEC. Now, let us look at the development of standards in the PV system. What are those committees that are responsible for it? I have captured here the area of activity, the most important activities that I have captured, not all of them, and the corresponding BIS committee and corresponding IEC committee. So solar PV energy system ETD 28, which corresponding is IEC ETC 82, electrical energy storage system ETD 52, and there is corresponding committee in IEC also. Secondary cells and battery ETD 11, IEC 21, low voltage switchgear ETD 7, IEC 121, power cable 9, then 20, electrical installation ETD 20 and ETD and IEC 64. There are some other area which I have kept it for information, one is solar thermal, even though it is not a PV area directly linked to that. But MED4 is the committee dealing with BIS committee, and corresponding committee is ISO committee, ISO TC 285, solar thermal. But the solar pump, which is directly related to solar PV, is MED20, and the corresponding committee is ISO committee is there. Then I have listed the important standards on solar PV and the corresponding IEC standard. In most cases, Indian standards are direct adoption of IEC standards, and there is no differences. But the addition to addition, it will be different. A few handful Indian standards are exclusively developed, for which there may be no corresponding IEC standards. But the important standards I have kept in the first two cases is the voltage band for electrical installation is IS 12360. This is important in the sense that it talks about the standard reference voltages, frequencies, because these are necessary for integration of various systems that will be connected in the solar PV system. So also distribution power quality like harmonics. Then solar PV terms and definitions corresponding Indian standards and IEC standards. Guide for PV power engineering system is IS 14153. Then important PV module standard is IS 14286 series. Corresponding IEC is 61215 is the important series. So also PV films 16077 and IEC standard is 61646. The other standards like UV test for PV modules is IS 16149. Corresponding IEC standards are there. Utility connected PV inverter. There is test for islanding prevention. That is a very important test. This is IS 16169. Safety of power converter for PV system IS 162221 series. Concentrator for PV module design and type approval wherever they are used. This is IS 16228. Balance of system component IS 16229. And PV's standalone system design verification IS 16230. Then these standards, LED based solar lantern is now corresponding IEC standard is available. This is IS standard 167476, which is used and distributed all over the country in the beginning of solar generation, that the popularization of solar cells. Then PV concentrator performance testing IS 16662 series. PV system solar tracker 16663. PV modules ammonia corrosion test is very important test 16664. Connector for DC application is very essential for solar PV applications 16781, and corresponding IEC is 62852. Measurement procedure for material used in PV module. There are a number of standards are there. IS 16792 series. Junction box IS 16911. Then important area is PV system testing, documentation and maintenance. This is very important because it is essential for satisfactory operation of solar PV system. That is why there are a number of standards under this series is IS 16960. Then power conditioner efficiency measurement this is IS IEC 61683. Salt meat corrosion testing is very important 61701. PV system performance monitoring is 61724 series. PV module safety 61730. PV array design 62548. And ground mounted power plant design. This is also a very important area because a lot of power plants are coming up in India 62738. EMC requirement 62920. Life cycle and risk assessment 62994. And then PV system guide for QA quality assurance in installation is 63049. Optics for concentrator. This is essential for concentrator type of application 62989. The concentrator module thermal cycling test 62925. Solar PV water pumping. This is the application of solar PV is IS 17018 series, and solar PV water pumping test procedure is 17429. These are only for information for solar thermal application. There are ISO standards and corresponding Indian standards are there. ISO 9488 for vocabulary. Then water heating system 10217. Solar flat plate collector 12933 series. Solar cooker 13429. Glass evacuated tube solar heating 16544. And solar thermal concentrated type 16648 series. Important new standard issued by IEC in 2020 this year. is 63092 series, the building integrated PV modules. IS 63126 PV modules and materials for operation at high temperature. Then mathematical models and calculation examples are given in IEC 63149. 63157 is guidelines for quality assurance of power conversion equipment. IS 63279 sequential and combined accelerated stress testing, and IEC 63292 is roadmap for robust reliability. Some of these standards are still under development stage as the technology has not matured enough. Then in this slide, I have projected the mandatory implementation of Indian Standard Quality Control Order that has been issued by MNRE, the nodal ministry in India. This list of standards made mandatory since 2017, but dates for implementation has been extended a number of times. We check the website of BIS or MNRE to get the latest date. These are, one is crystalline silicon photo PV modules, is IS 14286, thin film modules 16077, PV modules thin film type is ISIC 61730, power converter 16221, and utility interconnected photovoltaic inverter IS 16169, then storage battery 16270. These are all comes under mandatory BIS certification. So all the products that is being placed in the Indian market has to have BIS certification compulsory. The certification requirement of solar PV, this is being operated in India by BIS. There are two schemes are in operations. Scheme 1 is the normal ISI mark scheme, which many of you are familiar with. Many product standards are also covered under mandatory certification of ISI mark, like cables, MCB, fuses, etc., which are also used in solar PV. For solar PV, another type of certification scheme, that is scheme 2, is used, for which a different symbol is used. This symbol you can find in laptop, TV, many other electronic goods, LED lighting, and now in solar PV. It is based on type test certificate issued by BIS recognized laboratory, and certification is issued based on documents submitted and no factory visit is required. It is much simpler than ISI mark scheme. Details are of course available in BIS website. This is what I've said, that Ministry of MNRE has made it mandatory. Then IEC operates a certification scheme on renewable energy. This is also based on type approval, and this is for the international level exchange of goods, that is facilitating exchange of goods. In addition, there are other international agencies like UL, TUV, they also operate certification schemes. Then there are a number of other guidelines, additional guidelines issued by MNRE on solar PV, which would also be required for supplies related to MNRE sponsor scheme. A list of such guidelines are also captured in this slide, like the PV modules requirements of IEC 61215 and IS 14286. Then power conditioning unit should be as per BIS standard. Efficiency measurement as per ISIC 61683. Environmental testing should be as per IEC 60068. EMI EMC 61000. Earthing pit shall be as per IS 3043. And of course, all cables should be of copper as per IS and should be grade as per the requirement. Then there are test requirement for salt meat test, IEC 61701. Many of the corresponding Indian standards are already available. IEC 61853 is this temperature performance measurement. IEC 62716 is ammonia corrosion test, the safety qualification test, and 62759 is the transportation testing. So these corresponding IEC standards are there. So these are again made a requirement by MNRE guidelines. Additional requirements like switch circuit breaker as per ISIC 60947, this in Indian standards are there, and these are being certified by BIS also. Surge arresters. Then IEC 60364 for the SPD, surge protecting device, corresponding Indian standard IS 15086. Then IEC 61643 is the low voltage surge protection devices. Then the cables are corresponding cables for AC side is the 694, IS 1554 and 7098. These are all applicable. And as far as DC side is the DC cable, for which so far is the EN standard has been specified, but now a new Indian standard IS 17293, which has been printed and is under publication. So anytime, in a week's time, it is going to come. IS 17293 is the solar DC cable. This is electrical cable for photovoltaic system of rated voltage 1500 volt DC. This type of cable is used between solar panel and other equipments. It's suitable for outdoor long-term installation and under direct exposure to radiations and humidity. This cable is designed to operate at conductor temperature 90 degrees centigrade. It meets the requirements of thermal endurance, UV resistance, and ozone resistance. Conductor material is annealed tin copper class 5 as per IS 8130. So the solar DC cable, the corresponding Indian standard, is due for publication at any day and should be used by the industry. Additional requirement of MNRE guidelines is junction box. This is IP protection. Energy meter IS 16444. This is again also kind of a mandatory. Solar roof mounting structure for the corresponding standards have been mentioned. Finally, PV installation standards is also very important, as the installation process is a bit complex involving PV array design. Grounding is very important. Wiring has to be proper with site selection, insulation type, and which can sustain high temperature solar radiation. All these are essential requirements. Termination of cables is very important, as voltage drop due to bad termination can affect very badly the performance of the whole system. Installation of controller is atmospheric conditioning to be managed along with inverter and battery. That would require expert handling, which I am sure in detail will be covered in the next presentations. So standard IEC 60364-7-712 has been adopted as Indian standard IS 16997, which should be used. A new chapter in National Electric Code of India on this topic has also been added. This NAC is under revision, and the draft NAC is now available in BIS website for public comments. All can look into it and send comments to BIS.
Our next presenter for the day is Mr. Shivaraman Krishnan, and his topic for discussion today will be installation of rooftop solar PVs. Under that, electrical practices, and he will also correlate that with a couple of case studies. That is always a kind of live experiences teaches us a lot of things. So it's my honor to introduce Mr. Shivaraman Krishnan. He is advisor to Anert Solar Consultant. He is BTech Electrical Engineer in 1988 from Government Engineering College, Thrissur, Calicut University. He is also a chartered engineer and corporate member, Institute of Engineers India, Kochi. Then he is also a chartered engineer empaneled with the Ministry of New and Renewable Energy, MNRE, Government of India. He is a certified trainer. The qualification pack of rooftop solar grid engineers and rooftop solar photovoltaic entrepreneur with Skill Council of Green Jobs, MSDE. He is also a member expert committee of Solar Plant Inspection Scheme, ANAR, that is state nodal agency of Kerala, under which accredited solar resource person of ANAR and accredited solar power plant inspector of ANAR. So with this small introduction, I would like to request Shivaraman Krishnan sir to take it over and guide us on how they implement all the standards and regulations and ensure the safety as far as solar PV installations are concerned. So over to you, Shiva sir.
So the contents are divided into 5 types of system, typical components, and how to prepare a site, how to mobilize a site. A few NEC recommendation, that's evolving standards which we may have to follow in future. And I will conclude with one case study. So time is limited, so I rush now with the presentation. I will not be touching upon too much of codes and standards. Devdas ji has already covered all that. My focus is only to tell you a few best practices which we have to follow. So here the solar rooftop systems, the solar PV system is broadly now into grid connected systems and standalone systems, or off-grid system as it is called. And in the on-grid system, the country follows the net metering mode as well as the gross metering. That is the for independent power projects or the captive consumption, there will be gross metering system. And net metering system is largely followed in the domestic and commercial establishments having connected load less than 1 megawatt. And off-grid systems, we have two types: the standalone, and the recent addition to that is the hybrid system, that is with the grid connectivity, a battery backup. That kind of a system is also now gaining popularity. Typical components, I will just introduce you to introduce a few major components of the system. We have on the rooftop, we have the solar panels, and through a combiner box and the distribution box, the DC system is completed, and the DC input is given to the grid inverter, where the power conversion happens, and the AC output directly goes to the disconnect switch through a solar meter and an isolator. So there the AC component is also, AC part of the solar system is completed. And when there we have the point of common coupling, where the grid is also interfaced and the load is also connected. And we have a bidirectional meter to measure the power flow in either direction between the PCC and the service connection. So these are the major components, and this is the basic single line diagram of a net metering system followed under a rooftop facility. We will go through how a site preparation is done now, because that is the objective. What are the best practices and how smoothly an installation can take off. Now, the project engineer need to conduct a thorough study on the shadow-free available area to install the system, and he need to access the array for maintenance purpose. How it can be done, whether you need to construct special stairs or any walkways, etc. So such things he need to plan in advance. And he also needs to place keep some space for cooling the solar modules if it is a rooftop installation on a slanting roof, which generally people do not follow. Then it has to also blend with the prevailing aesthetics of the building and the premise. If it is a battery system, see that the inverter and batteries are closely installed, so that the wiring length can be reduced, and thereby the losses and energy losses and power losses can be, voltage drops can be reduced to a larger extent. And then most importantly, protecting the array from theft and vandalism. So array location is the first crucial step for a project engineer. He also need to have some key installation safety aspects to be kept in mind, depending on the height and the other constraints of the building. The fall protection above 6 feet is actually mandated. Anything above 6 feet, you need to have a fall protection for the personal security of the installers. And slippage or tripping on the roofs can happen, so barricade it with proper handrails. Then most importantly, the personal protective equipment has to be there for every operating personnel. It includes the shoe, helmet, and rubber gloves. Rubber gloves, when I say it is up to 1000 volt category, rubber gloves needs to be there, because we have, even though it is rooftop and output may be 230 volt or 415 volt, but the DC voltage exists may be 600 to 800 volt. So the operating people, the installers, need to have a rubber glove of appropriate voltage class. And leather gloves are also very crucial, because there are a lot of sharp edges on the module as well as the module mounting structure, which can damage their fingers. Another aspect is the people are working on the rooftop and exposed to sun, so quite natural that sunburns can happen. Particularly, the work is done only during the sunshine time. Sunburns can happen. The technicians and the supervisors should always carry a lot of water with them. That is more important. Let them not go into a dehydration mode. Toolbox meetings shall have to be a regular regular activity on a daily basis in a site for all the safety practices for equipment as well as the technicians. Here, I just narrowed down a few photovoltaic specific instruments. These are PV specific instruments. I have not included the normal multimeters or earth tester, something like that. These are the specific equipments required at a site for installation. You need to have a magnetic compass to identify the orientation. You need a tablet app for a shadow analysis locally. Earlier, we used to have Solar Pathfinder, which is now being mostly replaced by applications. We have inclinometers for measuring the tilt angle of the module, and we need an irradiance meter to check the radiation level at the site, the direct normal irradiance at the site. And PV analyzer is an equipment which will give you the PV curve, how it can be, how it is traced at site. An analyzer is a very key tool, very key instrument during the pre-commissioning test. And when we need further the thermal grade cameras, which can identify any hotspots, which may be due to some internal damages of the cells, or the excessive shadow can cause hotspots to be created. So these things can be captured in a thermal camera, thermographic camera. And what finally, all the modules in India, the MNRE stipulation says that there has to be a radio frequency ID embedded in the panel between the glass and the cell. So there needs to be an RFID card reader with the installer to identify the factory test parameters of all the parameters of that module. So these are the PV specific instruments. Before you commence first, I have described the PV specific safety aspects. And let's start the installation with a very small. This is a very old technique used, and many people have really confused while installing the solar PV module. We need to identify the real, the true south, but what probably mostly by mistake our people do is they identify the north-south direction with the magnetic compass. But that will not give you a fairly true south direction. So how do you practically identify the true south direction? It's a very simple technique used. It can be used at site. A 3 feet long stick is kept somewhere near the at an interval of say 15 minutes. You can keep it from 11:30, 11:45, noon, 12 o'clock, 12:15, and 12:30, like that, and trace the shadow and mark those shadows with dots. Once you identify the shortest length, you extend that length backwards also. So that gives you the shortest length of the shadow will give you the direction, the orientation in which the true south and true north has to be there. So your module should face in line with the true south. You can have a solar noon method also. If you clearly know the solar noon, you can identify the solar noon from the various softwares available. Mark your south north direction accordingly. So that gives you the right north south, true north south direction, which will give you the optimized energy yield. We now move on. We have identified the north south direction, and now it is our next target is to place the module mounting structure. So in the picture you can see a flat roof where ballasts are used. Ballasts are the weights used to hold the module from flying away. While constructing this kind of a system, it is many customers insist that the roof shall not be penetrated. They will not allow you to break or cut the roof. Many of them will be new also. So you need the counterweight. The ballast needs to be designed in such a way that it can be used. It will be good enough to withstand the wind speed, acting from the bottom side as well as on the top side of the module, because the wind tunnel can create upliftment of modules. So there may be the accidents which can happen. The modules may fly away. So these ballasts are designed in such a way that the weight can be good enough to withstand the wind voltage, wind speed at that area. So it is important. And finally, after keeping the ballasts and modules arrive, it is a general practice that you can use. You can put some cement mortar on that and glue it with the terrace level, so that it remains firm even at heavy winds. It will not move. It will be stable. And the second type of array, next slide you can see, second type which is commonly used is on the slant roof. Here you will see the slant roof where the orientation of the module is along the roof slant. Here in this picture, I would like to point out a couple of errors also. One is the tilt angle which the module is expected to be in that region. It may not be correct, true also, because you are installing it along with the truss. And this truss in the picture, it looks like 45 degree. In India, probably you may have to be, may have to install it at a different tilt angle, different depending upon the latitude where you are installing it. So here, one aspect is you try to, if possible, if you can create a tilt angle of the module which can match with the latitude of that area. That will give you the better yield. The second aspect is closely installing the module probably may heat up the module, the cell, and the cell may degrade itself. So you need to check with the manufacturer what should be the minimum clearance height to be kept, so that sufficient cooling can be affected on the solar cell itself. Because if overheating of cell can cause lesser power generation. And one more aspect is you can see a walkway between the two rows. This is essential for the purpose of cleaning the modules, periodic cleaning, as well as carrying out any maintenance. Probably in this picture, this picture maybe I have taken it from the internet. It may be a cold country, the temperature effect may not be much, but in tropical country like India, where the sheet metal, aluminum sheet metal troughs are used, it may cause degradation. So this matter needs to be factored in while analyzing your energy yield. We need to consider when we talk about the mounting structure, we need to consider the load on that PV system. MNRE says that the maximum weight per meter square shall be 60 kilogram. So your design shall be in accordance with that criteria. That is the load bearing capacity of the terrace or rooftop or the structure. And you may have to consider the typical maximum wind load prevailing in that area, including consideration of the height that needs to be factored in. Maybe in taller buildings, maybe 20 meter or above, the wind velocity, average wind velocity or the maximum wind velocity may be quite high, particularly in the coastal areas. So a standard design which is used in the central parts of the country may not be good enough for the coastal areas. That is why we see many times whenever there is a storm, we see the modules flying out in Vizag and those coastal areas of Andhra Pradesh. So this needs to be factored in, and also needs this seismic zone factor. Under what area, seismic zone this area lies. This needs to be considered while installing your system. Your ballast should be capable of that. And finally, if you really wanted to have a different tilt for different seasons, to enable the seasonal tilt, your module mounting structure shall have the facility to tilt it periodically. which can be done manually instead of depending on any automated tilting mechanism. So manual tilt provision shall be provided in the structure, and that is an important consideration while installing the system. Moving to the next slide. I think we will now we have discussed about the structure and the foundations, site preparations. Now, when we start installation, it's a common site. You can see the picture. It's a common site. The people, the technicians, or the worker level, mostly the unskilled workers, they keep walking on that. Most of us know what is the effect of the walking or standing or sitting, kneeling on the modules during installation. It will lead to micro cracks in the cell, which will not be immediately visible. So the contractor may install it, test it, and hand it over and walk away. The crisis begins only after a year or so. The micro cracks slowly develops as hot spots, and the panel can ultimately panel leads into damage. So this is a very crucial step in the supervision is required very closely during installation. This does not happen much for the ground system, but for rooftop there is always a tendency of the workers to cross over through standing or stepping onto the module. Let's see through a video. So we will now see. We have now seen the effect of people stepping on the module. The module will meet with the premature end of life. So we need to be very cautious about that. In fact, for utility scale system, before handing over, nowadays the power producers have started asking to perform EL test to verify whether any cell cracks are there. So this has become a norm or a prerequisite before handing over the plant to the end user. So that is a very important, significant factor of the stepping on the module. And now we move on. How do we prepare the cable layouts and cable connections? The DC wiring, MNRE stipulates that you need to conduct it with copper conductor wires not less than 4 square mm to be used for inter-panel wiring, and for the entire DC system, the wiring shall not be less than 4 square mm, the minimum size. And the voltage drop, you need to consider, you need to factor the length so that the DC voltage drop from the array junction box to the inverter DC terminal shall not be less than 2%. DC joints are not a good practice in joints are not permitted in DC cables because of the voltage drop it causes. And for the connectors shall also be DC rated. Like cables are rated for 1000 volt. So appropriately, the connectors shall also become 1000 volt rated. The small tip here is, if possible, finish DC wiring before array installation to allow effective isolation of DC system. You can finish your DC wiring and finally install and do the last interconnection on after the sunset. So that will perfectly go ahead with considering the safety aspects. Here, the picture shows a few cable practices on a large rooftop. You can see the lidded cable tray perfectly covers the DC cables. Even though cables are rated for UV protection and outdoor application, the cable tray is a crucial aspect. It has to also survive for the entire plant life cycle of 25 years. So lidded cable tray is shown in the figure and labeled every 2 meters. You can see no exposed conduit here. Even the PVC conduits are not allowed. It has to be the UV rated PVC conduits beneath the panel we have to use. And conduits are not even visible, in fact. So that is a good cable management practice. Here is on the module end, you can see how roof penetrations are done under the solar PV rooftop module, how the cables are taken downwards. The openings are well sealed with the waterproofing compounds. And we have, you can see in the picture, they have used the stainless steel cable ties. And even the corrugated tubing is that black UV rated tubings have to be used and needs to be appropriately labeled. Needless to say, it is not that the module alone will survive for 25 years. All the associated equipments and the components in the balance of system needs to also survive for its maximum life period. A very useful tip when you really do the array wiring, you can see the correct and wrong methods of wiring. The idea is the area of conductive loops has to be reduced. The positive cable is taken, it is looped serially, and then you can see finally when it is connected to the array junction box, the magnetic loop area formed is quite large in the wrong practice. You look at the left side, which is a correct practice. Even though you may have to use a little extra cable, here the loop area is very less. So this reduces the risk of lightning induced voltages into the cable. It is a practice which many of us unfortunately does not follow. Let's move on to the next slide, where I have tried to show you. This is again one way of minimizing the effect of the magnetic effect. On the top you see it is called a daisy chain wiring. The positive and negatives are looped and finally connect. The bottom picture gives you a slightly different configuration. You can see the red with the positive and the black wire with the negative. They are cross-linked at alternate modules, so that the magnetic field is nullified and the possibilities of striking the induced voltages due to the lightning, either direct or indirect, it is reduced. The chances are reduced. I think I will share this slide. You can have a look at your convenience later. We'll move on to the best practices on the the earthing arrangement. Here we see we have to have 3 types of earthing in a rooftop system. The first is all the DC earthing. All the DC side has to be earthed. That is the DC module and the array structure, and maybe junction boxes or the DC distribution box. All this forms the DC subsystem. So the DC subsystem components has to be earthed using minimum not less than 6 square mm copper conductor, and there also needs to be interconnected to create a equipotential bonding. In fact, you can have 6 square mm or 10 square mm aluminium or 25/3 GI to the earth electrodes from the MMS also. And for lightning arrestor earthing, we need to have 10 square mm copper or 16 square mm aluminium or 25/3 GA flat for lightning earthing. This is strictly restricted to the domestic system, rooftop systems. You can see a single in all the earthing, you can say earthing single line diagram, where the PV generator and the inverter in between, you need to have the surge protection devices, and different categories are also shown. You also need to have, if the distance is more than 10 meter, you need to have either you need to have the surge protection devices on both ends, that is on the array end as well as the inverter end. Similarly, from the inverter output, also, if the length is more, you need to provide length is more than 10 meter, you need to provide surge protection on either side. The different classes of surge protections are shown. In fact, if you look at the interconnecting side, it is surge protection 1, which is a more toughest in that class. So all types of categories are appearing in this rooftop. This particular requirement is under amendment in the upcoming NEC subdivision. A lightning protection system on the rooftop. I've taken it from one of the manufacturer of lighting systems. He has provided the lightning air, the components are lightning air termination rod, then the down conductor and the earth electrode. So all the three constitute the system for lightning protection. On the rooftop, you have the lightning air termination rods, which the number and height of the air termination rod are dependent on the lightning LPS required for that zone. Depending on the lightning protection zone, lightning protection system classes are defined. So based on that, you can estimate the number of earthing conductors, either using the rotating sphere method or the angle inclination angle method. So either can give you the coverage area of the air termination rod, to what extent that rod will protect the modules from direct strike, lightning strikes. So you can see the red cable which is coming down from the air termination, that is 6 square mm copper cable, and finally it is terminated to the master earthing junction box. So this is how a typical scheme is there, but the number of electrodes, number of air termination rods, the height of the rods, etc., are purely dependent on the area of coverage given by the individual air termination rod, and those principles have to be applied for arriving at these quantities. In the earlier picture, we saw array isolation as a DC isolator, which has to be a load breaking category, and on-load isolator also to be provided on the AC side. But here there is another insistence of to be operated by the utility people, which has to be under control and which can be secured only on off position. You can use the padlock only when the isolator is in off position, and the contacts has to be visible from outside the box through an acrylic or transparent outer cover. And of course, I think I've mentioned all this in the electrical inspectorate requirements. Minimum is that the installation has to be certified by a competent licensee of appropriate licensee class, and you need to ensure that no backfeeding while the utility supply is off, which means that anti-islanding. And additionally, this isolator which I mentioned earlier, you need to provide a manual isolator between the distributed source as well as the utility system, which has to be operated by the utility personnel, located from 2.44 meters from the floor, visibility of separation of contacts, and capable of padlocking in open position. These are the absolute requirements of that isolator. Moving on, next is now these are the upcoming recommendations of DC and AC cables by the National Electric Code. DC cables to be 4 square mm, the DC cable has to be copper conductor, and AC cable, fortunately the AC cable from the inverter to the AC distribution board or the point of common coupling needs to be copper up to a capacity of 25 square mm. Another important is the introduction of a ground fault interrupter. Now the inverters available in our country, most of them does not have any ground fault detection and interaction. This is an American term. In what we call here, it is nothing but the residual current device. Are never incorporated neither by the inverter manufacturer, and many times the integrator also does not do this component in his system. So now the upcoming code stipulates that a ground fault interrupter shall be provided. It is okay if it is provided in the inverter itself. And for for PV arrays where one conductor, either positive or negative, is earthed and connected to a functional earth, there has to be a mandatory GFDI to be installed. In fact, it is prudent enough for every system integrator or the end user to insist, even though it is costing a little bit. But considering the ultimate safety of the equipment, it is strongly recommended that the residual current device shall be kept on the DC side on the PV array. It can be preferably on the string monitoring box. Okay, this is the last one of the requirement. This is called the rapid shutdown system. Now it is becoming mandatory that there has to be disconnects in the PV array. This is insisted by the emergency services like fire department and other, when environmental calamities happens, the power does not get disconnected from the PV array. So a rapid shutdown system, when such incidents occurs, has to be effected. So an equipment called a rapid shutdown system is being now proposed in the upcoming electricity code. And next slide. Case study is the last point. I'll quickly round it up, and so with that I will conclude. See, this is a picture of a small. This is a small. It's an unfortunate accident which has happened. It's a explosion. You can see the extent of damage which has happened to the string, the combiner box and the DC junction box kept together. We could not really identify the fault, but the most probable fault which we have understood is a possible loose wiring or loose termination which has happened on one of the isolator, and the smoke started coming out. One of the person occupying that building, he rushed and isolated the DC fuse, which is not a good practice, because he isolated it on load condition, so which caused an explosion, and the fire got propagated. So here the key learning is that the loose connection could not be identified, which eventually led to a large scale destruction, including the inverter.
Our next presenter for the day is Mr. Ravi Kumar Gurumurthy, and the topic what he is going to cover is importance of electrical safety in rooftop solar PV installations. Talking about Gurumurthy sir, he is consultant at Quantum Sun. He holds a master's degree in physics and electronics from Madras University in 1978. He is a member of a core committee of CIA and IGBC, India Green Building Congress, Bangalore chapter. He has also consulted for the World Bank and was in the expert panel of Government of India Solar Mission, Implementing Agency, Solar Energy Corporation of India, and the National Institute of Solar Energy. He has also worked across all functions: solar cell R&D, manufacturing, quality, product development, and field evaluation, design, sales, and marketing, which also includes a training part. So with this small introduction, I would like to hand over it to Gurumurthy sir to take it forward.
Okay, let us continue with this. So this and all I wouldn't like to, because I'm sure most of you will be aware of this basics and all that. Solar cells, maybe this one would be of interest. For example, PV generated power is pure DC. So this is something which we should keep on in our mind, because that is what is going to be of great relevance in our further discussions. So another important thing that we should know is what the modules are made of. As you would see, of course, glass is there, but there are other materials, particularly the encapsulating materials, which are polymers, and they play a huge role not only in deciding the life of the module, but also in ensuring that no sort of electrical accidents or the incidents which could really impact the people around, and also the property to the damage can happen. So that is why I'm showing this structure of the module. It has glass on top, which is toughened and high transparent glass, and then we have got 2 layers of ethyl vinyl acetate, which is the encapsulating material, in between which is you have the series of solar cells which will ultimately get laminated, and behind that you have got another impregnable sheet which will not allow moisture to go in, because EVA is not a perfect barrier for moisture. And mind you, this has to last for 25 years. And now there are companies which even offer 30 years power warranty. So most of the modules made are of crystalline silicon, and 93% of the module, even though there are so many other types of new materials have come and the new processes, but then mostly it will be silicon solar cell. And this, of course, earlier it was described, and I don't have to really describe about drift type system. Okay, little bit before we get into the technical aspect, just I would like to quickly go through this. So we have these rooftop targets for the different states, which you may see later. And then these are all the installation which have taken place, and you see the dark blue is all about the ground mount system, and the gray one is the capacity additions year on year rooftop systems. So the rooftop system is lagging behind. Of course, the target itself is total target 100, out of which 40, but then it is lagging behind. So as you would see, as of now, we have latest report says 5.95 gigawatt of rooftop has been installed out of a target of 40 gigawatt. This needs to be completed by 2022, and we need to see how rapidly we are able to scale up and reach to what extent we can do that. So this is the top 5 states which have the highest rooftop systems. So now let us come back to the actual topic. What are all the safety hazards which one faces in rooftop
Sir,
system?
sorry to interrupt you.
Yeah.
Can you please adjust your camera so that we can view you properly?
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
So because I am seeing the slide, so is it okay now?
Thank you. Yeah, that's fine.
Okay.
That's fine.
Okay, fine. Okay. So the hazards we need to know, and they also need to know what are the causes and how we can prevent them. So there are 2 types. One is we can classify them as non-electrical and electrical. And first, let us look at the people related. Non-electrical, of course, it was already highlighted by Mr. Sivaram Krishnan about the fall from height and all that. So not only people falling, but there could also be dropping of heavy objects. So people working down below or moving around, they may be hit by some objects from people working in the roof. And then there could be inhalation of fumes, which is not necessarily applicable to rooftop anywhere, especially when you are handling batteries and all that. And of course, since you are working on the roof, you may be disturbing, may not be aware of some tree or something which may be nearby, and there could be some honey bees or something, you may disturb them, and a whole lot of things can come. And when you are especially working on a roof, this could be very dangerous. So these are all non-electrical things. And electrical, of course, as has been described, there could be electrical shock, or in worst case, in extreme case, electrocution. There could be burns, as Mr. Sivaram Krishnan said, while the walkway and all that, it can get heated up. So thermal burns, and also electrical. So when there is a spark or something, you don't know, suddenly the flame comes and then your skin gets burnt. And chemical, of course, when you are handling batteries and things like that. And of course, injuries arising out of anything. It could be any kind of injury. Maybe you are trying to avoid a spark or something in your urgency. You may fall back on something and get hurt. Okay. Then you have the property related. So personal property, what could happen? Breakage or damage. So accidental impact, falling on debris. So either something can happen to the module, or it can fall down and it can break. And nowadays heavy storms and snow have become very frequent. Snow, of course, not here, elsewhere. And then hailstones have really become very, very serious issue. And nowadays the hailstone size also is growing because of climate change pattern. And then vandalism, of course, this is unavoidable. People vandalize just for the sake that they see some glass. It's a temptation to see so many glass. So children and even grown up, they just like that for fun, they throw stones. And of course, there could be theft also. So unauthorized entry and theft is another possibility. And of course, again, weather related, which could be flooding and storms. Electrical, there could be fire, which could be because of shorting, arcing can take place, or overheating, as highlighted by Mr. Sivaram Krishnan, that the cable has to be properly conduited and not exposed directly to the sunlight. and there could be ground fault, lightning strike, all of which was nicely explained by Mr. Sivaramakrishnan. And then burns again, it could be electrical. The burns again could come because of flames or arcing or some such thing. And damage due to explosion. If there is an explosion, there is a capacitor or something big, so there could be an explosion, and splinters can fall on your body, and that could really create problems. Okay. So arcing PV systems now typically earlier it was 1000 volts, now it is 1500 volts up to that we have. So with such large DC voltage, as you know, DC is very difficult. Arcing in circuit is inevitable, and you, as was so told earlier, the incident where somebody was trying to remove the fuse box, which was carrying current, the circuit was live, and when you try to break that circuit like that, obviously it's going to create a lot of huge fire can happen. So with electrical circuits involving thousands of modules, as you know, in large power plant, thousands of modules and lengths of wire running into many kilometers across acres of land, there exists many potential points of arcing. So you have crisscrossing cables and so many connections. So any connection which is loose, or if the insulation has gone bad, they are all potential sources of arcing. So they need to be identified and it needs to be prevented. Obviously, it is not possible to ensure 100%, but then our effort, that is why high alert is required, especially in an electrical system like PV system. And incidentally, I would like to highlight that unlike a large land-based or ground-mounted system, the rooftop system runs, we run greater risk, because in an open field, if any fire catches or something, there is nobody around. Whereas if you have the rooftop system, which obviously is on the roof of a building below which people are working, living, and all their properties and equipments, manufacturing, all those things are there. So you can very well imagine the consequences of a fire in a rooftop system. So what are the how PV stroke fire actions can take place, and what are the consequences? So arcing, particularly on DC side, leads to fire accidents, fire damages the insulation. So even though their neighboring cable may be all right, but then it could get stripped. Fire damages the insulation, exposing the bare conductor carrying DC. Now, if this bare conductor comes into contact with a metal roof, so many times metal sheets are used in factories and all that, it can pose serious electric hazard because the entire metal roof will become alive. So when fire is confined to narrow space, another thing is, as Mr. Sivaramakrishnan showed, the gap between the module and the roof was so less. So even if you have high earths, mostly the fire is confined in the narrow space because the cables run below the modules. So narrow space between the array and the sloping roof will prevent what, even if you have made the whole circuit disabled, but still water has to reach so that you can extinguish the fire. But then because of that narrow gap, you can't reach that fire. And heat can soften the metal structure below, which is again a very, very serious problem. And it can cause expansion of the supporting structures below, and the roof can collapse, and it can cause severe damage to property and injuries to people, or even it can, in worst case, cause death as well. And then the glass panels, because of extreme heat, after all, glass can also break. And luckily, EVA is something which holds the glass pieces together, but there is always a possibility of the glass shattering and falling all over. And again, as I was mentioning to you earlier, the EVA, which is an organic polymer, then when it gets heated, obviously it will release all kinds of toxic, it's a carbon compound, so it will release toxic gases. And then glass debris, this is another thing, because glass is a smooth surface, and if you're trying to fight the fire, you'll be putting a lot of water around that, so it becomes a very, very slippery surface. And then for people who want to douse the fire, they will find it extremely difficult to do it further. And then the high possibility of loss of life or ill health, injury, and possible destruction of PV and assets. So it's very clear that the PV system, unlike any other electrical system, unlike the other electrical system, comes with its own serious challenges, and we have to really address them, and in a different way. So see, as you see in this case on the left, you are seeing the collapse of the PV racking itself, because as was discussed earlier, the heat was so high, and the metal below could give way. And then if it happens to be a wooden roof, as it happens in many of the Western nations, So then you can very well understand what can happen. So on the right, you see there is so little gap between the modules and the roof. So you see the jet of water coming, but it is going and hitting the panel, which is actually shrouding the fire. So this is another issue. So problems in firefighting, particularly fighting a PV fire, is that switching off the isolator would not stop DC flow, especially during daytime. Of course, nighttime there is no possibility of fire taking place because there is no generation. But then when you are thinking that I have switched off, I mean I have removed some certain cables, but then the problem is as long as the sunlight is there and as long as the solar cell is in the right, I mean if it is physically all right, it will generate electricity, and then many of the cables will be light. And more so if because of heat the insulation has been stripped up, then I mean you will have live wire spread across the roof. So isolation may not be complete as there may be other sub-arrays connected to the same inverter and the DC capacitor input circuit of inverter will take some time to discharge. So even though you may think that you have disconnected the inverter and the grid is not connected, but still on the input side the DC capacitors in the inverter will be carrying charge and it will take time to discharge. So with water splashed to douse the fire, so obviously water and electricity is a very great lethal mix, as they say. So you have water around, we have some cables lying around which are live. So with bare live conductors in contact, metal roofs can again pose shock hazard. So fire emanating, this I have already said, so there is no need for me to repeat that. Then let us see what are all the possibilities of from where this shorting and arcing can take place. So that is why I said earlier on that EVA, the encapsulating material, is so important, because there are so many companies which are offering encapsulating materials. We don't know the quality unless we in the process of that is why the manufacturing process is so crucial to ensure subsequent destruction or incidents like this. So in the first photograph, you can see that arcing is taking place within the module itself, and that could be disastrous. So improper layup of cells. So when during the manufacturing phase itself, the module, if the solar cells are not properly laid between the two layers of encapsulant, there is some mismatch or physical contact or something like that. And again, poor soldering the entire cells one to one. There are hundreds of cells, all of them are soldered. And if there is any poor contact, then again they'll become a source of heat. If not immediately passed away, it can become a source of heat, and then the contact will become degraded further, and it will create more heat, and ultimately it will lead to fire accidents. So again, cell shorting, neighboring cell shorting, and then aging. So if the encapsulating material is not fit for UV exposure, it is not fit for lasting 25 years, then again it's also supposed to act as an insulating material. So if it fails, then of course there could be problems. So we should keep in mind we are talking about modules which can work for 25 years. So if these encapsulating materials fail within the first few years itself, you can see the effect. So the effects are of course fire accidents in severe cases, breakage, damage of module and the cells also when there is continuously subjected to expansion and contraction. So you will find cells developing micro cracks, and ultimately the circuit itself can break. And then micro crack has got its own implications which can lead to disastrous degradation. So there could be puncturing, burning of backsheets because of flames like that. As you can see in that bus bar itself has got burned, because it is very clear that the point of contact there, that soldering that was done was very poor. It had developed and then it had burnt, and in the process it had also burnt the encapsulant material. So which can also lead to water penetration and further degradation. So here again, you have got a module junction box. Again, it could be because of poor soldering of the cell output circuit to the terminal box terminal. And then, all the modules carry bypass diodes to take care of any shadowing effect. And because of their failure, again, there could be some accidents. And then moisture also can interfere, and then they could deteriorate the contacts inside. That could also cause problems. Again, the effect is fire accidents and sometimes permanent damage to the module. Then we have this module interconnects. Nowadays we have got male-female connectors, and if the cables are not of a good quality, And then many times what happens is if a particular cable has gone bad, we try to replace, and when we replace it, I mean, it's unfortunate that we don't have a very good standard, and what is happening is the connectors provided by one company, it does not is not compatible with one supplied by another, so there could be loose contact arising out of that, and that could be a potential source of fire. And as you know, when you have a large power plant, you have hundreds of thousands of connections made like this, and you can even if you take a very small probability of the connection failure, I mean loose contact, you can imagine the effect. So it is extremely important at that installation stage, and also earlier to that on the in the procurement stage, while this aspect of subsequent damages and incidents that can happen should be taken into account. So that is why quality, not only in the installation and other aspects are important, but also it needs to be maintained right from the point of manufacturing. In fact, I would say that manufacturing causes can create as much problem as installation problems. So here again, you see they expose cables, they have a problem. I mean, they are exposed to the rodents, and you know, rodents, their teeth and all that, they need to keep it sharp. They have to all the time keep cutting something or the other. So they have this temptation, whether it is edible or not, they will keep on cutting something. So this is a very good stuff because it is soft, so it loves to bite soft material like this. So then that can lead to, as you see in the subsequent, of course, this is not because of rodent. It is very clear. There are so many hanging wires. So very poor conduiting, very poor cable management, as Sivaram Krishnan was showing in this presentation. And then you have inadequate cable capacity. So Mr. Sivaram Krishnan was mentioning about the quality of cables, and earlier Das also was mentioning about the standards about cables. So if you use underrated cable, obviously the cable will get heated up, insulation can go, and then there could be problem. And mind you, in summer nowadays, the summer temperature is rising because of global warming. Not only here, as you know, globally, the last 2-3 years, they said year on year, the average temperature is going up. 40 degrees in Spain, 40 degrees in France, you can very well imagine. So when you have a black cable and metal inside, you can actually see what could be the temperature the conductor and would be subjected to. And over and above that, if you have a cable which is underrated, you can understand very well the disastrous consequences that could follow. Then we have shorting and arcing, which was a typical example was shown by Mr. Sivaram Krishnan again. So it is something similar to, he also showed about the problem in combiner box. This is the combiner box is a potential source of fire accidents because there are so many connections taking place and control devices are there, breakers are there. So this definitely this requires a repeat, I mean, extraordinary attention and care, and trying to do the right thing at the first time itself. Otherwise, repairing and locating and changing, all these things will create problems. So this needs to be taken care of. And then you see the ground faults, I mean, causing the fuse to blow, and then DC switches again, because it was not able to withstand that breaking temperature, I mean, the flame that was coming, so it has got burnt. And then electrical batteries, of course, batteries, if you are using it, then if it is shorted or a large current is drawn from that, which is beyond the rated capacity, then that can also cause fire accidents. Then this is the most referred or quoted example of what could happen if your rooftop system is not properly done. You can see this is a 300 square feet, 3,000 square feet food warehouse in the United States. In the year 2013, more than 7,000 panels were installed on top of this warehouse, and this loss amounted to $100 million. Just imagine. So and when this happened, of course, at that time, many people were not so well, and I mean, they had understood this issue, how to handle it. And in fact, the fire chief of Delanco, that city where this happened, he refused to send his firefighters for many reasons. A couple of them were that the possibility of, he was aware that PV is a dangerous thing because with water and electricity, and then the kind of roof. So the possibility of electric shock as the electricity from panels cannot be shut off. And then he said, not having a clear path on the roof to cut a ventilation hole. So since there is always a possibility of some accident taking place, so besides all those electrical disconnects and things like, we should also have physical means to reach the right spot at the right time and try to douse this fire and try to limit the fire to as minimum as possible. So electricity and fire, we just cannot prevent it. We have to always anticipate the possibility of such a thing happening, so that we don't land up with such serious damages running to several hundred thousands of dollars. So electrical hazard mitigation, poor component choice. That's why I said quality pays philosophy should always be held high in our mind, starting from the procurement of modules, and if it is possible to go to the level of cell, level itself, and then poor design. Both it could be the, like for example, the same ampacity of the cable, that is again a poor design, poor installation. Deployed, if you don't have properly trained people and then they don't follow any codes, they are not aware of the consequences. And many times we may be aware of so many things, we may be perfect specialist in all the technology and all that, but then every manufacturer has got his own way of expecting us to manufacture. So many times, even in our own personal life, every equipment that we buy, it comes with a user's manual. We never read that. We assume that this is the right way, but then you will find that the instructions are very, very important, and then they write, if these instructions are not followed, the warranty is void. So the moment you do something and then you are not aware you have done something, if you say that if you call the manufacturer, oh, such and such a thing happened, your module has failed, first thing you will find out is what you have done wrong. So it is very important to read the manufacturer's installation instructions. So then again, incorrect and loose connection, this is very, very common, and this is where we also don't exercise care. And of course, poor servicing and maintenance, so that is important, need not be overemphasized. And as I was telling you earlier, there has to be easy accessibility to the roof, and we have to assign responsibility, especially when the same services are shared. Like for example, it is in the roof, so there could be a AC technician who may be coming, lift operator may be coming. So if there could be somebody else going to the tank to wash the tank or something, because everything is not off. So if they don't coordinate their movement, and if they don't tell, I am going to shut out this this roof with a PV module, you take so and so this thing, you don't do certain things, then that could also lead to disasters. And then frequent regular inspection and servicing and maintenance as per the roster. So when you install the system, obviously you have to prepare a roster, maintenance and servicing roster, and then hand it over to the customer. If you are not going to, after handing over, your responsibility is over. So, you know, when arcing is displayed, it leaves behind a signature, you can always know. So that is also a good way of detecting and then preventing arcs. So install arc fault locators, which was again, I mean, since Sivaram Krishna already spoke about it, and you need to have it in modules, module strings, PV string combiners, and between array and inverter, and within the inverter as well. So upon detection, the circuit should be disabled with the DC PVR fire fault circuit, AFCI as it is called. The system should have an annunciator, which visually shows that this interrupter has operated. So this is very important, and these are the devices which typically does the job. And then let us quickly go through this codes and standards. So 69011 is for the arc fault detection. National Electric Code. It requires that PV system installed on buildings within the system has to have 80 volts, be equipped with listed means of detecting. So any system with the system would be greater than 80, we have to have detecting system and interrupting series arc faults resulting from a failure in continuity of the conductor. Following the detection of an arc fault, operation of the PV system must be disabled. The system must be provided a visual indication that an arc fault has been detected, and the system must be manually restarted. So this is very clearly meant to detect and then prevent this. Now, of course, there are exceptions, because it says PV systems not installed or in buildings, like in a carport. So there is nothing below that, and only, I mean, of course, car is there. I don't know. I really do not understand logic, but then he says this need not be done. He's saying, after all, there are hundreds. I've been a very big parking lot. I do not know. There should be some logic. Anyway, PV output circuits and DC to DC converter output circuits that are directly buried or installed in metallic raceways or installed in enclosed metallic cable trays are permitted without arc fault circuit detection. So you can go through the rest of the thing, and let us move on to the next slide. So it stipulates that this code 6, the UL also has got its own standard. It stipulates that PV-AF-CI device must detect electrical arcs of 300-watt modules, as low as 300-watt module, and it has to shut down in 2 seconds. So there are other equivalent codes, IEC codes, which was highlighted by Mr. Das. Now the next one is about 690.12, which is the rapid shutdown of PV system, which was again discussed about a little earlier. So PV system circuits installed, that if only these kind of rapid shutdown systems had been installed, that several hundred thousands of dollars which was destructed property, it could have been easily avoided. But then you realize that this NEC code came in greater, came with greater emphasis in 2014. So because that was a great learning. So conductors, it says the conductors extending beyond 10 feet from the array outside the building or more than 5 feet inside the building are required to be de-energized upon shutdown. So the moment you find that there is some issue, then if you shut down the inverter, then the series of shutting down should happen, so that up to the module level you shut down the generation. So you avoid any flow of current in the circuit and possibility of shorts, making the metal contacts live or causing, giving instance for fire taking place. So stickers and signages all should be provided. The conductors must be de-energized to below 30 volts. Okay. So then you can go up to the module level rapid shutdown. This is again for previous combiner to be installed within 10 feet or to be de-energized the conductors. Then inverter installed indoor should have. So these are all specific instructions which is given in the code. So this is how the rapid shutdown system works. We have got this, as you can see, the light blue in the middle just after the combiner box. You are within the combiner box there, like that you have, and there are also a lot of very specific how many circuits you can have in a rapid shutdown device. So all those things are very very clearly mentioned in the NEC code. So this is in a large power system, power plant. So as soon as you shut down the inverter output, and then the grid is disconnected, the inverter senses no AC voltage, so it shuts down, and immediately a sequence of shutting down takes place. So then we have got the third one, which is again relevant to this, that is 690.15. So it requires the DC output of the DC combiner box. As I was telling, combiner boxes are very high potential sources for fire accidents. So that is why they have specifically defined codes for combiner box also. DC and it, as you know, DC combiner box, everything is DC voltage and DC current. DC output of DC combiners mounted on rooftop dwelling shall have a load break disconnecting means located in the combiner or within 1.5. This opens all ungrounded circuit conductors from all sources of power. So arc prevention, power optimizers. This power optimizers is they track the power point, so you can you can immediately make the module work at a very low voltage, which means so much. Which means you are reducing the DC voltage in the circuit. So this power optimizers is one way of extremely containing this. The other one is, of course, microinverters, because they produce AC voltage, which is about 240 volts, which again is much easier to handle, and you don't have those issues. And ground fault occurs due to undesirable current, and I don't have to explain what it is. So the mechanical, electrical, and electrochemical degradation of PV system can lead to electrical faults to ground in different locations. So this could all be because of deteriorating electrical connections, insulation failure, inadequate grounding device design and installation, and poor installation practice. So actually those causes which are responsible for arcing also is responsible for these. If ground fault is a short circuit, the fault current can be very high. So what are all the module frame? PV systems have several exposed non-conducting. So if there is any ground fault take place, then you have with all these metal combinations, you have a problem, and also you have got very high voltage you are dealing with. So some causes in a greater listing, cable insulation, aging, fraying of cables, and I think I will leave at that, but I will show some photographs, and I would like to only stress on the last one, rising temperatures, summer are becoming hotter, and then that is another cause for great worry. And then here you can see some cable issues, which can lead to potential problem. Many times the cable is a major cause. Poor insulation, you can see the insulation has cracked all over, which means it is not of a quality PV material, and also it is not properly stabilized, and its temperature. I mean, suppose the current flows. I mean, if it gets heated, it should be able to withstand that heat and all that. So then kink, this is while installation we do certain things without being aware of the impact of the cable, because we don't physically see any damage. So we bend it the way we want. So that can cause tremendous stress in the metal, and then it could be a source of high resistance and temperature generation. Rod and bites, as we were mentioning, and then pinching, you use some tool or some such thing which pinches, and then you have the insulation getting damaged. And then poor wiring practice, you can see in the first one, the cable is going from one row array to another. You just like you see, it's just like a strand which is hanging. And when air blows, these cables will be continuously swinging from one end to another. So the connection to some terminal box can all become loose. So this can happen. And then you can see the sharp edge in the next one. So the cable may be actually applying pressure on the edge of the metal container, and it could get cut, which is again a problem. And then we are overstuffing. You are putting so many cables into a small orifice, and it gets stressed, and then maybe it gets cut also. And then there is no cable gland, which means stress can directly come on the cable and the cable insulation, and then you are going to create strains, as you are seeing in the bottom one. So other causes, if you leave things unattended, so that is the biggest attraction for any animal, birds, everything will come there, because they need a secure place, because they all have predators and they want to raise their family, and then they want to provide shelter to their offsprings, and also they need to protect themselves against inclement weather. It could be hot summer or a severe winter, so they would like to. It provides extremely good, because if we have a small narrow gap between the module and terrace, roof, and in the winter it is especially very comfortable, because you can keep yourself warm under that. So this could be a problem. And then flooding, if you don't have proper drainage system, and if it is a level is not proper, then there could be flooding in the roof. That could also be a problem. So issues in ensuring proper guiding, you can see what these are all the failures which has happened. Galvanic corrosion has taken place. It has so when you have two dissimilar metals which are in contact, obviously corrosion takes place. And then here you can see copper in contact with aluminum frame, so that has caused this. The braid has become weak, and then it has got ultimately snapped. And then you also see the terminals which is getting corroded, and you see the copper ground conductor in direct contact with the mounting frame. So what is the problem in ground fault? Identifying and locating ground faults in large array is extremely difficult, particularly if it is a small rooftop system, 5 kilowatt, 10 kilowatt in the roof, it is fine. But then if you are going to have megawatt size system, this is going to be difficult. Good wiring practices, that's what I was insisting, that at the time of installation itself, you have to exercise great care, and then follow the right practices and the right conventions recommended by codes and standards. And despite all these things, we still have to regularly inspect, otherwise there could be infestations of pests and things like that. It is unavoidable. So it is very important how frequently we inspect, check, and then take adequate precautions. So troubleshooting, visual inspection, and then examining the ground fault detector interrupter, measuring the current to ground, checking individual combiner boxes for fault, and then taking appropriate. So these are ground fault detector interrupter. And then ensuring safety in rooftop PV is recognizing that, like any other electrical system, PV systems have hazards associated with electricity, fire, and electrocution, and more so in PV, because as I listed earlier, there's a dangerous concoction of everything going wrong. You see water and electricity, a smooth surface, and despite your physical disconnect, there could be still electricity flowing, because the sunlight, the fuel is continuously providing fire for the, energy for the solar cells to generate. So especially when you have hundreds of modules producing DC voltages of high lethal value and kilometers of cable running, it becomes all the more a big challenge. However, with right design philosophy, choices of components, complying to standards, because many times we do not know what is the right thing to do, and then even the standards keep changing depending upon the, changing for the good, not for the bad. It obviously based on the new experiences, no field data, they upgrade. So, and new devices may be brought in to take care of those issues. So we have to constantly follow whatever standards are coming up and try to follow as rigorously as possible. Following meticulously the best installation practices, uncompromising integration of protection and safety devices, which is what Mr. Sivaram Krishnan was also mentioning, that people don't really, if you think that this is an expensive thing, let us leave it. So lightning protection and all is ignored, which can, in one stroke, if it can simply wipe out the entire asset. So making a rooftop operate safely, India's cumulative capacity rooftop has around reached 5 gigawatts. So unlike, luckily the systems, most of them are roof. If you see the spread of the rooftop system, it is spread between residential, commercial, government buildings and things like that. So the numbers are not really big, but as the number grows, then we will see more incidents. But luckily so far no big accidents have been reported except 2 incidents. One was in Delhi and another was in Tamil Nadu. But the fact is, which we should admit, is that many such incidents go unreported for the simple reason that it will bring bad publicity for the company. So this is natural, and but unfortunately, what happens is, if any such incidents are not shared, there is no learning. People will not get to know that this could be the problem and what are all the things to do. So it is very important that such incidents, okay, you may you may not mention the company and all that, but then the incident should be shared so to the larger professional community. So to make, of course, there are enough statistics to prove that it is not unsafe. We can make the system safe, but then we have to follow the standards. So we have the, as you know, NEC keeps evolving. Every 3 years they come out with their standards, and then this 690 is specifically for the photovoltaics. And then every time they keep updating, and because the systems are also changing. Earlier it was 600 volts, 1000 volts, 1500 volts. So the technology is also changing. So the standards and codes also have to keep in pace because of the dangers inherently involved. So these are all the standards. I don't want to look at it because this has already been listed by Mr. Das earlier in exhaustively. So all we have to do is to ensure safety and prevent any such incidents. We have to have the right technology, right practices, following the codes, standards to the as close as possible. Because many times it may not be, but then if we are making any compromises, it should be first of all avoided. But then we have to see the next best thing. If the best is not available, try to do the next best thing. And regulations, whatever regulations that is being imposed by the authorities, that has to be strictly followed. And of course, nothing is complete without proper training, because ultimately the whole thing, whether it is manufacturing or installation or commissioning or maintenance, it is the people who come first. So without a proper manpower, a trained manpower, not only in knowing how to do, but also we have to train them so that they get to know what are the consequences of not doing things correctly. So we have to bring all this, integrate all these practices into our system, so that we help build a safe and reliable PV, and people continue to have greater faith in this. Because one bad incident running like the one which I showed in the earlier slide, that could send very, very wrong signal, and people will become extremely scared, especially the industrial and commercial customers, where properties and assets worth several crores of rupees are maintained.
Capacity, as per our understanding, it always depends on the size of the cables what we are using. So can you elaborate further that what exactly you mean by inadequate ampacity of the cable, so that
okay, every
that
cable
can be highlighted?
Every cable, for its safe operation, the manufacturer gives what is the maximum current it can carry. So
Right.
because the cable, and especially the cable it has its inherent resistance, if we pass any current beyond that, obviously the cable is going to get heated up. So it is very important to refer to the manufacturer's specification, and he would definitely give the voltage and also the current levels up to which you can use. And another important thing is, you also know that Mr. Sivaram Krishnan mentioned that the voltage drop across any length of cable at from the one end to the another should not be more than 2 volts. So obviously, if you have current flowing more than that, obviously the cable will get heated up and the resistance also will increase. So voltage drop. So for all these reasons, you need to stick to. I mean, you need to refer to the manufacturers, cable manufacturers' standards, and then go by that. And yeah.
Okay, but then do you suggest upsizing of cable in this particular matter to maintain the adequacy of ampacity?
See, the main thing that comes is copper cable is expensive, so people try to compromise on. Suppose Sivaram Krishnan recommended 6 square mm, and then people go for 4 square mm and things like that. So without realizing the consequences of undersized cables. So it is always better to go. I mean, suppose you find that for that particular circuit 4, that is why it's mandated is 1.25 times the maximum current. But if you find that there is a cable which is just about 1.1 or something ampacity, then it is better to go for a cable which will be 1.6. Suppose after 1 or it's only 2 amperes, I would suggest that go for 2, because that would be much safer than go undercutting, saying that okay, chalta hai karke. So that is where the whole problem comes. You have also shown in this thing we have shared how the earthing is done by putting some sand in this thing. You shared, isn't it? Someone in the group shared. So then we have fire accidents frequently taking place in hotels and hospitals, because of all these things like not using the right size cables and not sticking to the recommended practices. So see, it is not worth saving penny wise pound foolish, they say. So unless we take care and don't mind spending a little bit extra to ensure safety, that culture has to be inculcated.
Thank you very much, sir. My next question is to Shivaraman Krishnan, sir. There is a question from Mr. Anand Khadabadi. What he says that we see very minuscule importance given to adherence of the standards for LV switchboards, that is ACDBs, in rooftop solar. What is your viewpoint, being an expert in this field? What advice should we give to the end users also to safeguard themselves from the electrical hazards?
Any switchboard manufacturer will comply the standards for manufacturing of the switchboard. So there is actually no specific IES which applies to the manufacture of LT switchboard. But only issue is, depending on the place of installation of that switchboard, the protective features are more coming into picture. One is you have to have those surge protection devices to be considered in accordance with the type requirement of that surge protection device.
Okay.
So that alone is the additional feature, nothing beyond that.
Okay, but from safety perspective, what would be your message for the end users as well?
AC distribution board in a solar environment is peculiar in one way, that it is a bidirectional device. The power flows in either direction. So to that extent, the components and devices used in that particular the switchboard shall also have those features. For example, if you are using a current sensing device, residual device, then the directional flow of the current matters. So such kind of aspects needs to be taken care in the panel manufacturing, because it has to be a bidirectional device.
Okay, another question again to you, sir. How solar tracker, you have mentioned in a presentation, how solar tracker helps in efficiency of PV module?
See, I don't think I mentioned in a tracker itself. I mentioned about a manual tracking. It's
Okay.
not automated. I was very clear. See, that is to adjust. There is something called the seasonal tilt. As the sun moves up and down in the northern and southern hemispheres, we come across different equinoxes. You are all aware of that. So, depending on that, we can adjust the tilt angle of the module. Or sometimes in some places it may get reversed also. The orientation of the module for a shorter duration can, because the sun will be maximum on the northern hemisphere itself. So that kind of a manual tracking, because it is not possible to have a automation on a rooftop, because the rooftop needs all sort of design, needs a dynamic loading on the terrace, so which makes it more cumbersome. So normally it is not considered. Even the largest solar plant in India does not have considered tracking. Tracking only is manual. Manual tracking or tilting the table. Tilting the table itself will give you the adjustment of tilt angle.
Okay. Thank you very much, sir. Next question is from Mr. Manish Kumar. It goes to Mr. Devdas Goswami. Very informative about the IS and IEC standards, but do we have any published manual for such design and installation from government body on solar or from any international body? Like we have substation design manual from CBIP. Do we have any such design manual from any of our government agencies? Mr. Devdas Goswami.
Yeah, design manual, the design criteria and the recommendation from MNRE is there. The design of the solar power system is also there as an IEC standard is there, general solar power system. So this much is there, but not as a manual. I had heard about it. Maybe other speakers, they may be knowing about any manual, but I am not aware about any manual has been come out so far.
Okay. Next question is to again Shivaraman Krishnan from Mr. Nishithar Kabir. Is inter-row space provided for cooling solar module is needed?
Obviously it is required. The inter-row spacing is to prevent the shadow of one module falling on the other. So it needs to be factored in while doing the shadow analysis in the design stage itself, and appropriate safe distances shall be considered. You need a detailed shadow analysis for that, depending on the location. Softwares are available for that.
Okay. Gurumurthy, say next question to you from Mr. Vikas Almadi, then India. Solar power is DC power. It has voltage of 100 volt to 1500 volt DC. DC arcing is a big issue which leads to fire in solar boxes. What precautions shall be taken in connection connectors and SPDs and in general to prevent any sparking to avoid any fire hazards?
I have already listed what are all the causes and what are all the things that needs to be done. The important thing is, of course, many times they give the torque. What is the torque you have to apply and all that. Of course, if you exceed that, the terminal itself can break rather. So you have to ensure that you make the connection proper. And many times, of course, you have locking arrangements available, so which ensures that. And you have got spring washer kind of thing, that is of course for mechanical systems and all that, but there are many ways of ensuring that you have proper contacts made. So there are standards also about that, so it is better to refer to them, and then usual practices of making the contacts, like for example soldering. So soldering practices, it's very important, that is at the stage of manufacturing also, like that there are standard practices how to connect the cables to the terminals and what kind of terminals you have to use, what kind of connectors you have to use. All those things needs to be taken care of. There also you have to, there are connectors which they also come with some maximum current carrying capacity and all that. So you have to take the right kind of terminations have to be properly done. So these are all simple yet very, very important aspects which needs to be taken care of.
Thank you, sir. Again, next question comes to you. You talked about before handing over the project to the owner. there is some norm of checking the cracks. So the question here is how to define the micro cracks of module cell during EL test. And since there is no IEC or any concrete norms for acceptance or rejection, how do we define that?
That
I
seems to
will
me.
not be able to provide an exact answer because you are talking about micro cracks and standards. I'm not aware of any standards of for micro cracks. Micro cracks can not only cause problems of working, but it can also severely enhance the process of degradation of the modules. So micro cracks detection as in the tools that Mr. Sivaram Krishnan showed, that thermographic camera. So you can run through that. Nowadays in large plants, it is not possible for you to physically take a camera. So they are using drones, and then they scan the entire field, and they get individual modules actually, and then there are softwares available, artificial intelligence, they detects, and then it shows, and it tells which module, which array, which subtable, everything it says. So they immediately go there. So the solar technology, and especially when it has the system related understanding and solving the problem, has greatly enhanced, especially after the drone based scanning of the entire field has come. It is indeed very difficult. For example, a single module which is about 500 600 watts is the current. This thing, you have got so many cells, so it is not physically possible for you to check. So it has, and then when you have something like 50 megawatt, 100 megawatts and multiple, it is just not physically possible. So, and you cannot also do it continuously. So you have to have a sequence. You want to finish one project itself, it will take time. So you have to do that very frequently, and then you have to have a service provider who provides that. So it has to be done. So that is what it is.
Next question is to again Devdas ji. When will the NEC anticipated to come, and what are the ways to enforce that NEC as far as strict solar installations are concerned?
There is a Indian standard on solar installation is already available, which is there in the printed form. This is under revision, and the revised document of the solar installation part has been included in a chapter, which is in the final comment stage, and anybody can send comments. Please look into that BIS website to get the copy of the document. As far as implementation of solar standard is concerned, definitely all the implementation aspect is voluntary as soon as the standard comes out, but it can be made mandatory by way of some kind of a directive issued by MNRE. MNRE is the right body to issue as part of their requirement. They can give a guidelines that this is a mandatory requirement, either in the form of a installation requirement, or they can put it in the form of their own guidelines part. So that can be made mandatory.
This was raised by Mr. Manish Kumar. Do you recommend low smoke zero halogen cable, or even the worst case fire resistance cables in case of probable fire hazards? So there is a lot of confusion in the market about this kind of technologies. People are confused with fire resistance and fire survival cables. People are confused with LSZH cable and a lot of other technologies coming in the market. And the OEMs, they try to sell their cables with these different names or as jargons, technical jargons with left, right, center. So I would like you both the speakers to address this issue, that what is the proper choice as far as cables or the selection of cables are concerned in the solar installation and the technology part.
So I am not an expert in cables, but whatever little I know, I will share. I think as a practicing entrepreneur and then established solar professional, Mr. Sivaram Krishnan will be able to provide the right answer and the right recommendation. But all I know is that cable being the insulator being organic material, obviously when it is exposed to heat, it will start it will first start softening, and then beyond that point it will start emanating, releasing toxic gases. So one is the impact of the toxic gases itself, and the impact of any chemical incident taking place, then that can lead to disastrous consequence, and then the consequence of the insulation itself getting derated, and then causing fires. So you have to really see, as I understand, I may be wrong. So you have to definitely have a insulator which is stable, whether it is because of heat. It should be heat resistant. It's able to withstand maybe of 60 degrees or whatever, the higher the temperature, obviously, the better it is, like they do it in military grade and all that.
Solar DC cable definitely is a superior grade cable. That is, there are many international standards available for which an Indian standard has been getting published, IS 17293. It is likely to be released in a week's time. But this is application applicable for the connection to the DC side of the installation. So there are UV resistant cable, and they are also the FRLSH type. So these are all grades are FRLSH types. Even including for the AC side also, wherever the cables are being used, there is recommended is that FRLSH type cables are recommended, because IS 694, IS 1554, IS 709, these are all power cables for AC side applications. There are grades for fire resistance, low halogen cables are available. So these are the things only should be used, because as during the presentation of Mr. Sivaram Krishnan and Mr. Gurumurthy, number of times the issue of fire hazard has come up, and all these cables are also recommended by MNRE in their guidelines also. So FRLSH to be used, but whenever there is a risk of fire which can percolate down to a particular type of installation or maybe a building where fire safety hazard is a very important criteria, then of course the fire survival cable should be looked into and should be used, because those installations where particularly hospitals or maybe public buildings or maybe many other places where the safety requirements of the occupants is very prime criteria, in those cases fire survival cable must be used.